and that's the reason why our steering wheel was pulling to one side. So we should have a nice easy fix going in there. What's up guys, DIY Salvage Guy here. Welcome back to the channel. Today's episode, we're going to be tackling the control arm on the 2012 Audi S5 convertible. So if you guys are new here, I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much for that. Hopefully you guys will learn alongside of me and be able to teach me things that I don't know as well. So hopefully you guys will consider subscribing, smashing that like button, commenting, interact with me, let me know what you guys think about this stuff. Also, make sure you guys have your post notifications on. That way you guys stay up to date on the build and everything else that goes on the channel. And also, follow me over on Instagram. Got a link right down here, also down below. That way you guys can see the things that I post over there quicker than it makes its way over to YouTube. So, the 2012 Audi S5, when it was in the accident, it was hit on the driver's side. And the steering wheel is a little bit cockeyed. So, we're going to be replacing the control arm and seeing how it rides. And we're gonna take it for a test drive today as well and see how it does after we install that control arm. So stick with me guys, here we go.
Looking good. You did that yourself?
Yeah, it's getting there.
Yeah.
Should be back to normal another week or two.
Wow, you did a great job.
You saw it originally?
Yeah. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it was in bad shape, but we're getting there.
Was it an accident or you?
So you guys will remember the fender bolts that got ripped out of here. I had Wayne's Auto Body when I was having them fix the quarter panel. Weld the nuts back in there, so they did a great job with this. I'll be able to just get the bolts right back in there when the time comes to put the fender back on. And the other thing we're gonna have to do is just make sure that this is straight. Once we get the door off again, I think we'll use a hammer and dolly. We'll just straighten it out a little bit, make it perfect, because right now it's still really bent, but it served its purpose for what I needed it for at the time. So what we're gonna do now is get this tire off. We're gonna take the lug nuts off first. We'll loosen them, then we'll jack the tire up and jack the car up a little bit, and then we will make sure that we get the tire off, and I'll show you guys the bent components of the suspension. Anytime you are loosening up lug nuts, always do it with the vehicle on the ground. Another also super important thing when you're doing suspension is suspension components can only be tightened up when the vehicle is down on the ground under its normal load weight. So you see how the suspension sits right now, how it's a normal ride height. So what we need to do is we need to jack the vehicle back up when we are tightening up the suspension, and we need to make it so that it is under the same amount of load that it is right now. So the way we do that is by measuring where the tire sits currently up to the top of the fender. Now naturally we don't have a fender on it right now, so we're just going to use another guide point for it, and we'll use the top of the frame. So what I mean by this is, so this is our normal ride height. On the other side, I'll show you guys too. So the fender would probably be about here. So normally we would just measure right to the fender. Now, since I have the fender off already, it's going to be easier to do the suspension. So what I'm going to do is I just need to measure this to about here. And it is about 5 3/4 inches. So when I go to tighten up the suspension, I'm going to jack up the tire so that the tire is now 5 3/4 inches away from this. That will make sure that it's under the exact same amount of weight then as it is now. So we'll crack these lug nuts loose. Always going star pattern. Alright, quick suspension overview of the whole thing. You got the upper and the upper forward and rearward control arms. Then you have these are your tie rods right in here. This is your outer and this is your inner, covered by the boot. Then you have lower control arm right in there. That's your lower frontward, and this is your lower rearward. Lower rearward is where I think we have the issue. Might be bent, or the bracket might be bent. I'm hoping that the bracket is not bent, because that's going to be another issue that we're going to have to deal with. But what we're going to do is we're going to start by taking all this apart. This all should come out pretty easily, except for these. When I did this on the A7, these were kind of stuck in there pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss some PB Blaster in there now on all of these joints. And hopefully when it comes time to knocking these out, we have a much easier time doing it than we did on the A7, because that was brutal. We're just going to hit some PB Blaster right in this joint right in here. Try to give you guys a bit of a view of what we got to do down here. So we have to remove this bar that's under the strut, not the strut, the control arm. So we're going to take that off. It has these 3 triple square bit bolts that we're going to take out. Then we have this heat shield right in there that we have to take out. The metal thing in the back. Then we should be able to take that bolt off in the back, and then we have to get this ball joint right in there. So hopefully you guys can see that. So quick tip on this. So this is the ball joint that is connected to the lower control arm. And what it does is it has a tapered edge and it fits right into the strut housing. So you take this bolt off a little bit, bring it down so that it is flush. Then what you're going to do is you're going to use this ball joint press tool and you're going to put it on. And the reason why you leave that nut there so that it's flush is because you don't want to ruin the threads. Now, it doesn't really matter for us too much because we are replacing this piece anyway. But for anyone who just needs to take this apart and is not replacing this thing, this will make it a lot easier for you to get this on there and push it out without damaging it. So we're going to do that real quick. Give you guys a quick shot of this, how it sits on there. So you can see that it's on there pretty good. It's not really moving, which is what we need. What we're going to do is we're just going to tighten this up with the 19mm very slowly, and it should push this up and it'll release the control arm from the ball joint. And that pop is the ball joint release. Give you guys a quick look at the suspension. So this is the one that just came off the car, and this is the new one. Now, obviously they're extremely similar, but you can tell this one is slightly bent. So looking at it like that, you can tell that it's bent, which gives us our play in the steering wheel that we didn't want. So just up top you can see when it's straight. So you can see how different that is. And that's the reason why our steering wheel was pulling to one side. So we should have a nice easy fix going in there. So I think this was the issue, but we're going to replace the rest of the suspension components just to make sure that we have a nice smooth ride, and it's easier to do now than it will be in the future.
What are you trying to test out?
Tighten the suspension. Just to be under the weight of the vehicle. So we got the lower rearward control arm on. We're going to give it a quick ride. I'm not sure if we're going to replace all the suspension components because it's kind of a pain in the butt. But we are going to just take it for a ride, see if the alignment is good, and just see how it's riding. So we're just testing out the car, seeing how the suspension is. So it's still a little bit off, but I think that'll just be with an alignment. So it's much better than it was, but definitely needs to have an alignment. But I think that the remaining suspension components are probably good. I mean, it does stay relatively straight. I mean, it was pretty cockeyed before, and it's tighter too, so it feels good. That's going to do it for today's episode, guys. Hopefully you guys learned alongside me, because on this channel we just learn as we go. And so on this episode we went through the control arm, disassembly, and reinstall of all of that. But in the next couple of episodes we're going to be hitting the entire suspension, because this car is going to my nephew and I want him to make sure that he has a perfect car in every facet of possibility with that. So if you guys are new here, hopefully you guys stuck with me through the whole thing. Hopefully you guys are still here right now and you guys learned a little bit. So hopefully you guys will consider liking down below. Make sure you guys smash that subscribe button if you're not already. Comment, interact with me. I'll always do my best to interact back with you guys, because without you, there's no reason for me to do this. So I appreciate all you guys being here, my returning viewers and subscribers. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully you guys will continue to support me. Make sure you guys have your post notifications on, and also make sure you guys are following me over on Instagram. That way you guys can stay up to date on everything that I do. Hopefully you guys will be inspired by this, whether it takes you to just go out, buy a tool, buy a wrench, pick up a wrench, buy a car, do whatever you need to do. Just try to become a DIY salvage guy yourself.